The night smelled of damp earth and rusted iron, the kind of smell that clings to your lungs and makes every breath feel like a confession. Rain had stopped only minutes before, leaving the road slick and shining under a thin moon that refused to fully reveal itself. He stood there longer than he meant to, staring at the sack on the ground, listening to the faint, uneven sound of breathing from inside it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the sound of someone trying very hard not to disappear. "Don't look away," she begged. Her voice was hoarse, strained, but steady enough to cut through the silence. He had heard screams before. He had heard threats, lies, promises, and apologies. But this was different. This was not a cry for mercy alone. It was a command, a plea that carried something heavier than fear, truth. His hands hovered above the coarse rope tied around the sack. They were trembling. He told himself it was the cold, the wet night air, the exhaustion of everything that had led him here. But deep down, he knew it wasn't any of that. It was the weight of choice. The terrifying knowledge that once he untied the knot, nothing in his life would remain untouched. He had been hired to deliver the sack, nothing more. No questions, no delays. The money had been enough to silence his curiosity, enough to quiet the small voice that had whispered warnings when he first felt the strange, uneven shape shift inside the burlap. He had convinced himself it was cargo, something alive perhaps, but not his concern. People like him survived by not looking too closely. Until now. "Please," she said again, quieter this time, as if afraid the word itself might break what little strength she had left. "If you look away, I'll be gone." Gone. The word echoed in his mind. Gone how? Dead? Forgotten? Erased in a way far worse than death. His fingers brushed the rope, rough fibers scraping his skin. The sack moved slightly, and he flinched, stepping back as if burned. For a moment, he considered walking away. It would be easy. He could leave the sack there, report the job done, collect his money, and sleep without dreams. Or so he told himself. But her voice had already followed him inside his head. "Who are you?" he asked, surprised at how small his voice sounded in the open night. "My name doesn't matter," she replied. "Not yet. What matters is that you see." "See what?" He wanted to ask, but the question stuck in his throat. He had spent years avoiding sight, avoiding understanding. Seeing meant responsibility. Seeing meant you couldn't pretend anymore. Slowly, almost against his will, he knelt. The ground soaked through his trousers, cold seeping into his knees. His hands found the knot, tight and deliberate, tied by someone who knew how to make escape impossible. His fingers worked at it, clumsy at first, then faster, driven by something between fear and resolve. "Don't rush," she whispered. "They rushed when they put me in here." He paused, swallowing hard. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was distant, as if she were speaking from far away. "People who don't believe they'll ever be seen." That was enough. With one last pull, the knot loosened. He untied the sack, and his hands went still. The first thing he noticed was her eyes. Wide, unblinking, reflecting the moonlight like dark mirrors. They were not the eyes of someone defeated. They were the eyes of someone who had endured too much to surrender now. Her face was pale, marked with dirt and faint bruises, but there was a strange calm about her expression, as if she had already crossed a line he could not yet see. She did not move. She simply looked at him. He realized he was holding his breath. Slowly, he exhaled, the sound loud in his ears. You're alive." A corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You sound surprised." "I thought." He stopped himself. He didn't know what he thought. He had imagined anything but this. A living, breathing person looking at him with expectation rather than terror. "Help me sit up," she said gently. He reached out, hesitated, then slid his hands under her shoulders, careful, almost reverent. She winced but didn't cry out. As he lifted her, he noticed her wrists, red and raw where restraints had been removed too roughly. Anger flared in him, sudden and sharp, surprising in its intensity. "Why me?" he asked. "Why ask me not to look away?" She took a moment to steady herself, drawing a slow breath. "Because you already did. Back when you picked up the sack, you felt it, didn't you? That something was wrong. You just chose not to see. Tonight, you have a second chance." He looked down at his hands. They were no longer trembling. They felt heavy, grounded, as if they belonged to someone else. "What happens now?" he asked. That depends on what kind of man you decide to be, she replied. In the distance, a car engine hummed, faint but approaching. She stiffened. They'll come back, she said. They always check. Panic surged through him. Then we have to go? Now. He helped her to her feet. She swayed, and he wrapped an arm around her waist without thinking. She leaned into him, trusting him with a weight far greater than her own body. They moved off the road and into the trees just as headlights swept across the spot where the sack had been. He held his breath again, heart pounding so hard he was sure it would give them away. The car slowed, then stopped. Voices murmured, sharp and impatient. Did you leave it here? One voice demanded. Yeah, exactly here, another replied. Where is it? A pause. Heavy footsteps. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beams slicing between the trees. He pulled her closer, pressing himself against the trunk of a tree, willing his body to become invisible. Someone took it, the first voice said. Or it got loose. That's impossible, the other snapped. Check the area. The light swept closer. For a terrifying moment, it lingered on the ground just feet from where they hid. She squeezed his arm, nails digging into his skin. He didn't pull away. He didn't look away. He watched the light, steadying his breath, grounding himself in the reality of the moment. After what felt like hours, but was likely minutes, the lights retreated. The car doors slammed. The engine roared back to life and faded into the distance. Only then did he realize how hard he was shaking. She exhaled slowly. You didn't look away, she said. He laughed, a short, breathless sound that bordered on hysteria. I don't think I could have if I tried. They walked for hours, sticking to the trees, avoiding the road. She spoke little, saving her strength, but when she did, her words painted a picture of a world he had only glimpsed from the edges. People used, discarded, silenced because they were inconvenient. By the time dawn broke, pale and hesitant, they reached an old farmhouse on the edge of town. It belonged to someone she trusted, she said. Someone who knew how to disappear people the right way, by protecting them, not erasing them. Inside, she collapsed onto a chair, exhaustion finally claiming her. He poured her water, watching as her hands shook while she drank. In the daylight, she looked younger than he had expected, fragile in a way that made his chest ache. What's your name? He asked again, softly this time. She looked up at him. Now it matters, she said. My name is. She told him, and with it, she gave him a piece of herself he knew he would never forget. When the door closed behind him later that morning, he stood alone on the porch, the sun warming his face. He realized something then, something simple and terrifying. He could never go back to who he had been. The man who took jobs without questions, who looked away to survive, was gone. All because one night, in the cold and the dark, someone had begged him not to look away, and he had listened. Stories like this are not just about fear or suspense. They are about choice. About the moments that define us when no one is watching, when the easiest path is to turn away. If this story made you feel something, if it made you think about the times you chose to see or not to see, then you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. We share stories that stay with you, stories that challenge you, stories that remind you of the power hidden in a single decision. If you don't want to miss the next one, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and become part of a community that believes in looking closer, feeling deeper, and never looking away when it matters most.